Mr. Chairman, Ms. Vice Chairman, Chairwoman, sorry, and members of the committee, I rise to call for the elimination of the tax.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Steve Ackerman.
And who do you represent?
Do you need Ed? I represent myself.
Oh, good. Okay, go ahead.
I'm rising to call for the elimination of the tax on groceries. If you look at the USDA, their cost of food analysis goes a little bit to what Representative Kaufman was asking. If you look at their cost of food analysis, which is based on 2005 dietary guidelines, the average family of four in Idaho would pay about $749 per month on food. Now that's taking into account a few different levels that they include. That is basically the average of those three levels. If you took a 6% tax elimination on that, that would be $45 a month in savings. So it is a larger savings per month, and it is realized much earlier. If you compare that to the income tax cut, and I'm going off the original bill, there's been some changes to that, so I don't have an exact on what some of the impact would be fiscally, but if you look at that, that is number one, end of year, and if you took $48,000 median Idaho income, you're looking at about $32 in savings. It may be a little larger because we've now changed that. So you, number one, have a much larger per month, and it's realized earlier. So that's going to help consumers. The second point is going to help small businesses. The multiplier effect is simply stronger by eliminating the tax on groceries. And it's very simple economics. As people are driving to the store to purchase food, they know that they're going to have a lower cost on their food bill. They will tend to buy more. Now, I can't tell you how much more they're going to buy. I can't tell you how strong that'll be. Those are estimates the federal government has certainly tried to do when it comes to any multiplier effect, but the tendency is to spend more. And by the way, the spending would be at the local level. For the income tax, the corporations part, we are not sure how much of that money would be reinvested in Idaho. The last one is Idaho wages are about $1,900 on average for our fastest growing jobs created. We're less than all our competitor states. So this would have a bigger impact on low-income Idahoans. And then finally, if you look at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index for January, fuel, gasoline in particular, jumped by 7.8%, and fuel in general has gone up. Food prices are strongly affected by fuel increases. So food prices are going to go up in 2017. So if we put this in place, then that kind of inflationary effect on food would be offset by eliminating the tax on food. So this is going to help consumers, it's going to help small businesses, and by the way, even if that extra spending is on exempted goods, it's still going to result in more economic activity for the businesses. And it's a nice way to show a little bipartisanship, because we had plenty of Democrats as well as Republicans on the Senate side that voted in favor of eliminating it. So I stand for questions.
Any questions? Representative Raybould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ackerman, looking over this bill that we have here in front of us, there's going to be a loss to the state for the total amount of sales tax that is not paid on foods. And yet the state is going to reimburse counties and cities for roughly their share of what that loss of the sales tax would have been. Mm-hmm. But with the loss of the sales tax and the money we need to appropriate for the cities and counties, where does the state get the money to make up for that loss?
So, Mr. Chairman and Representative Raybould. So I'm used to being in a classroom where I immediately respond to a student. So pardon me for being very kind of casual. The short answer is yes, there is going to be a fiscal impact, but the original income tax bill also had a fiscal impact. Number one. Number two, some of that economic activity will make up for it. This comes down to what people are going to choose to buy with the marginal dollars they now have, and some of that would get picked up in sales tax. I could not say it would be the same amount. I could not say it would be close. This comes down to what people are going to tend to buy with the additional money. I would not claim that it would be as much. Over time, though, if we can get some higher wage jobs in here, that would help to offset income tax, some other revenue sources, but that's going to be a bit down the road. It's coming down to the amount of additional economic activity you can get in response. And that's a hard one to pick.
A follow-up?
Go ahead.
The last week or so, we've been approving appropriations bills on the floor of the House and going over the appropriation for each division of the state government and finding that we're really short of money on transportation. We haven't been
Yes.
able to fund that fully. We need more money in the education program.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't funded that fully. We need to put a little bit more money away for future disasters. If you notice, in 2008, 2009, if we hadn't had a bucket there to dip out of, our schools would have been in terrible shape.
Yeah, it would have been worse.
So I'm just really concerned about whether or not the state can take enough money away from these other departments and appropriations that I've talked about to cover this particular loss right at this point in time.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Raybould, that's a good question. At the end of the day, you know, food is what we call an inelastic good, which means government can put extra taxes on it, or like car tires, the federal government could put a special tax on it, and people are going to buy it. And so if you cut it, then yes, you can see it as loss of a very, call it stable, the governor's used the term stable source of revenue. However, again, people are going to do something with that additional money. The question is, how much will they actually spend, especially given if it's a higher percent that they'll spend, they're going to spend it today. They're going to spend it right away. They're not having to wait. They're not having to file for it. Number two, I would just say I think it's a bit unfair to put all of those other demands or liabilities, if you will, of government onto one tax. Idaho has a gas tax. We raised that a couple years ago. We have vehicle registration, which is a form of a tax. We raised that. And so my question would be, let's look at some of the efficiencies in terms of our spending when it does come to transportation. Perhaps we need to ask a more general question, and that is, why aren't we putting that into a general fund and really being very upfront and honest with the citizen to say, roads cost money, but let's scrutinize very carefully as to what that cost would be. Because borrowing to pay for roads, that's a cost too. There's an opportunity cost that we're not considering. So I agree to some extent, but I don't feel it's necessarily fair to place it all upon any one particular tax. I would say the same if it was a different type of particular tax.
Sir, seeing no further